On today's Locked On Twins, we are going to talk about life, liberty, and the pursuit of starting pitching, whether it makes sense to trade for it, sign it, some combination of both. Dave is here with me, and we are going to hit that discussion up right now on Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello again, and welcome back to Locked On Twins. I'm your host, Brandon Warren, and you can unfollow me on Twitter at Brandon_WARNE. Across the screen from me, Mr. Dave Brown at Answer Dave Brown. Dave, how are we doing today?
We're doing great, Brandon. Thanks for having me back, and we're going to talk some more Twins baseball today, like we do every time we talk about things.
Yeah, so thanks for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. And, of course, as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, we encourage you to be active within the show. It's an interactive program. Please feel free to leave comments, questions, queries, conundrums, and we will do our best to address them, be it on the show or in the comments. Love to see you subscribe on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a 5-star review. Give us. We're all asking for you to give us things. But no, this is the season of giving, so we beg for you to just be kind to us, be nice to us. Now, with that said, today's episode is brought to you by Jase Case. You're going to have to give me just 1 second here. I had the wrong read today, Mr. Dave Brown. Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase Case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's jasemedical.com. Well, embarrassing gaffes aside, we're here. We're ready to talk about, as I said, the Twins' pursuit of starting pitching. And before we get too far down that path, Dave, as my script begins to print out now, finally, on one of the vaunted printers behind me, we look at the guys that the Twins are going to have to replace. And it's Sonny Gray, it's Kenta Maeda, it's, between the two of them, you're almost 300 innings of pretty dang good ball. When you look at either of those two, do you get any sort of inkling that either one of them might be back with the Twins?
Really, the only inkling I see is maybe Maeda, depending on how the rest of the free agent market shakes out. If he's interested in coming back, I think Sonny's going to be pretty pursued, and I think the Twins will probably try and save some money on that transaction in particular. So I think if of the two, I think it's possible that Maeda, even further removed from his surgery, would be of interest coming back.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he continues to age as a non-flamethrower guy who cuts it, has good command and that sort of thing. Obviously, a work in progress last year, but I think he got better for the most part as the season went on. And he kind of strikes me as the kind of pitcher who from this point on will just sign 1-year deals until he decides to return, assuming he goes back overseas. It kind of reminds me a little of Hiroki Kuroda at the end there when he was signing with the Yankees, just one up. So I could see that being the case. If he gets 2 years, I really don't think there's any way the Twins go that route. And even Sonny Gray, if you could get him for 2 years and $50 million, that's probably going to be the best deal you could get on him in the free agent market. That's going to make sense for him to take and for a team to offer. However, I just see no intersection between what he will take and what the Twins are willing to do. So I think he's as good as gone, as much as he's coming off a Cy Young runner-up finish. I just don't think this Twins team can look at paying him for $25 million for multiple years and say, yeah, we want to do that.
Right. Well, if you look at how the owners spend money in a given free agent offseason, there have been times and seasons where you could maybe see a person like Gray coming back to the Twins. But if the restrictor plates are off spending again, even with the depth of the pitchers available in free agency, I still say that it's probably fanciful to expect him to come back to Minnesota.
And what's kind of wild is that, if I'm not mistaken, the pitcher they traded for him, Chase Petty, was like the 26th overall pick. They're going to, in all likelihood, recoup that draft choice, or a draft choice between the first and second rounds. That will probably be no more than 10 or 12 picks behind the original pick used to select Petty. So not a bad little 2-year fling with Sonny Gray while you launder pitching prospects. In general, I don't think you can look at this trade as anything but a positive.
A huge positive. It worked out really well. Gray, there have been moments in his career where, you wondered if he was going to lapse into mediocrity or something less than the great prospect that came up, years ago with the A's. And it's been, the Twins have done several transactions that have really worked out nicely. And that's a nice point you bring up about the draft pick coming back in the end. So it's a kind of a full circle thing. And, when that's how teams like the Twins like to operate. And that's 100% efficiency right there.
And if I'm not mistaken, he kind of had to shake the Vandy boys, Vanderbilt stink off him, because there was a stretch where Vanderbilt pitchers got hurt more than often. I know Rice was one of them, but I thought Vandy too had a stretch where they couldn't keep pitchers healthy. And, Sonny Gray's slight build. Nevertheless, coming out of New York the way he did, for him to get back to where he was, he deserves all of his flowers. So if we assume pretty safely that Sonny Gray has 2 feet out the door, Kenta has 1, maybe 1.5, you start kind of assessing what the path looks like to replacing those innings. And you can't, it's like Moneyball, you can't replace the home runs and the RBIs. You replace the innings because you play the same number of innings every night, and you need pitchers to throw those. And so the trick is going to be really locking in on, do they want 2 guys? Do they want 3 guys to add? Do they bring back everybody and just add 1 big guy? Do they add 3 small guys? Like, I think the outcome that would beat you over the head, like if you were watching Family Guy and it was telling you jokes, I think the outcome would be, well, why not sign free agents? Because then you don't have to trade any of your prospects. You're not losing anything other than money, which we never saw that money in the first place. If we watch Emmanuel Rodriguez play in Fort Myers, you can have that experience and then lose it. The cash doesn't mean anything to you. So in theory, you're thinking, yeah, free agency, let's go that route. But you're paying market price. Guys are already of a certain age because of how long they've been in the game to get to free agency. So they either have the mileage that goes with it, or they have the length of time throwing that many pitches. Nevertheless, can you explain why free agency isn't the slam dunk that people would think it is based on this? Because I think there's quite a few holes that actually make it more likely that they'll trade than it is to sign a free agent.
Well, the one thing that's you have to consider is I saw this. I can't place the source, and it's a guesstimate on the part of the thing that I read. But you hit on free agents, it's a success about half the time, maybe a little bit more. So there's a bunch of there's a lot of percentage of failure in there. It's sort of why you go out in one off season or whatever, and you spend money and it doesn't work, and then you don't ever do it again. Well, you're not really that's a waste. It takes more. If you want to call it a gamble, you need to have more bites at the apple than that. So that's why when you talk about signing 2-3 guys, building in the possibility that one is or 2 of them aren't going to turn out the way you want. That's the biggest thing. I mean, there's lots of other reasons too, but that's the first thing that comes to mind. That it is a little bit of a guessing game. Kind of like the draft. It's funny with these players that with all the service time, you think you know what you're getting. You don't necessarily all the time. So it is dangerous to put all your eggs in that basket and expect it to hit every time. So, and if you look at this is maybe getting around your question a little bit, but when you look at how the Twins got Pablo Lopez last year, they made a trade. They didn't, it wasn't a free agent deal. You kind of, I mean, that's kind of that trade is golden for both sides. It's really worked out, but you kind of are looking for that next. If it's not the quality of a Pablo Lopez, it's something almost where you you move a piece that you don't need for a player who maybe has a little bit of room to grow that your coaches can get at and coach up a little bit. It's tempting to do that too. And if you did it with Lopez, maybe you can do it with the next guy. So that's a couple of reasons why you don't necessarily go all free agent.
Well, we're going to take a quick second here. We're going to pause. When we come back, though, I'm going to ask you about, the merits of going and getting guys, having them in your system or your ecosystem, and then getting a feel for how you can coach them up and then extending them like they did Pablo Lopez. But before we do that, a message from our friends at Jase Medical. And so our friends at Jase Medical would love for you to know that we spend a lot of time together, you and I. We get fired up together on wins, and we mean us and the fans, on who wins, who loses, who starts, who sits. We're thankful for that connection we have with our listeners. And today, we want our listeners to have this chat be a little more personal. We just learned that you can get a 1-year supply on ED medications, and that means you realize that you can bring on extended travel, the next natural disaster, supply chain issues, and you're covered. You don't have to worry about whether or not you can refill your generics for Viagra, Cialis, Revatio, any of those prescriptions. And this is possible because of our friends at Jase Medical. Now go online right now at jasemedical.com. Get your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Just remember to use the promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well. Verified customer had this to say about Jase. I'm thankful for this service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills in half just to save them. I ordered most of my daily meds with a year supply. I also ordered the antibiotic kit, and now I feel secure. Prices are lower than local pharmacies, and I highly recommend this for everyone. So if you or someone you love would get some peace of mind by having a year supply of any daily medication, go to jasemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember to use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase. That's Jase Medical, JASE Medical.com, promo code LOCKEDON. All right, we're rolling into the bullpen here, second segment. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. And if you haven't heard yet, now you will. That Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Now, when it comes to pitching, my theory is this, Dave. If you're going to hand out big contracts, it should be younger pitchers, obviously. That's no brainer. But I like the idea of guys you develop doing that with, guys who you know the intimate medical history of. For instance, Jose Barrios with the Twins would have made sense on a long-term extension if they could have agreed on the term. It was the length that was a sticking point, and so therein lies the rub. He gets traded, and that's that. But I don't like the concept of paying big money and years for starters in free agency. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't work out. Again, like you said, there's a percentage of those that do. And the Twins would not be kicking themselves if they had found a way to sign Zach Wheeler that offseason instead of Josh Donaldson. Now, with that said, it's I can't wrap my brain around the concept of big money in free agents at starting pitcher. And a primary reason is why I don't think I can see this front office doing it. So I don't really give myself much time to consider, if they're going to make a big play for Aaron Nola, for instance. I'm not even letting myself really have the mental energy for that. Where do you stand on how you would approach free agent starting pitchers if it was your job as a GM?
I mean, I probably would be afraid of big, huge long-term deals that are a lot of money. I mean, it is easier to picture yourself if you wanted to be a general manager of a baseball team uh, in a bigger market where they're able and willing to make mistakes, and where you have other revenue streams, or you have other talent streams. A place like the Dodgers that develops their minor league players so well, and you can go out and make some big bids on some free agents and hit some and miss some, but you have other avenues of getting talent. So it's much easier tightrope to walk. But that said, there are some guys. Shohei not coming to Minnesota.
Right.
Yoshinobu not coming to Minnesota. Blake Snell probably not. Nola. We talked about Sonny already. Jordan Montgomery's probably not.
That'd probably be the ceiling, yeah.
Right. Kershaw, maybe the Dodgers or the Rangers. But you look at Eduardo Rodriguez, Lucas Giolito, Luis Severino, Seth Lugo, the Cuban expatriate Yariel Rodriguez, someone like James Paxton, Nick Martinez.
What about Jack Flaherty?
I'm afraid of his shoulder. He hasn't.
I'm afraid. Like the idea that he's 28 and has been a stud not that long ago. I mean, within the last few years. I mean, you can. I don't know. He kind of is on like that Dylan Bundy trajectory where he just kind of never really gets to, or maybe he got to a level and he never gets back there, because it's not like Dylan Bundy is particularly old, and he's available too. At least physically, maybe not emotionally. But yeah, I start kind of looking at that next tier down. I think the ceiling for who they would target is Jordan Montgomery. And I think it's because, and I think our good friend Jeff Passan wrote about his just destructive breaking ball, if I'm not mistaken. I could see the Twins saying, listen, we think we could turn him into a strikeout per inning guy with just one tweak. Not crazy mileage on his arm. Right. I think he could be the kind of like the top of the market for where they'll shop. And if he's getting $100+ million, I don't see that happening with the Twins.
And talk is that he's gonna get that much. So I don't know that he's going to be an option just for that reason.
I feel like the Patrick Corbin deal might be like a barometer there, or like you get to 5 years or 6 years and 120, 125 million pretty fast if you are a respectable pitcher who isn't 33 years old.
Right. And you talk about a deal that has not really worked out at all for the team. Patrick Corbin, I mean, is a cautionary tale for that kind of thing. Not a free agent, but exactly. But giving big money to pitchers can be a risky business. I think you look at somebody like Nick Martinez, James Paxton, Seth Lugo as transformed into a good starting pitcher last year,
or Eric Fetty coming back from overseas too. I could see that being a thing.
Right. That's kind of in a Miles Michaelis sort of
Colby Lewis.
Yes, that kind of path. So there are guys, if the Twins want to pursue a trade, they could do that. If the Twins want to add one or two starting pitchers that aren't going to break the bank, there's a group of 10 or so that from which to choose that they could do that and be in a similar advantageous position to where they were last year with their starting pitching. So it is possible to do.
I'm going to run through a list of a couple starters. I just kind of want to get a vibe for if you think it makes sense for the Twins to go after them. We can workshop concepts of what we think it would take to sign them, and then if it would make sense. Michael Waka is someone I cannot get a read on. I have no idea how good he is. And I feel like if you were to believe, he was great with St. Louis, and then he kind of hit a lull there, and he seems to be kind of coming back. I almost wonder if Jack Flaherty is going to follow a similar path. And I don't just mean because of the Cardinal connection there, but just, guys kind of have to reinvent themselves once they're not kids anymore. Waka's 32, so, I mean, he's probably would like to get a 3-year deal, but he didn't get one a year ago. So is he going to get one now? If budgets are reducing, maybe not. I don't know how I feel about him, but at age 32, I'd be at least interested in hearing what he is asking for.
You mentioned the phrase reinventing. he's somebody that's definitely done that since he broke in with the Cardinals a bunch of years ago. He had gone several seasons with poor production and injuries and injury adjacent type performances. And coming off last year, I would certainly be more welcoming to someone like that than I would have been a couple of years earlier. So Waka is definitely a possibility. I think a 3-year deal is probably what he's going to get. And I think the Twins could afford that. So that's a guy who I would, he's not at the top of my list, but he's on the list.
So if I were to set an over under at 3 years and 48 million, what do you have for Waka there? You think he's over that mark?
Maybe a little bit, maybe 50, maybe 52.
Okay, so if you can get him or Flaherty at that number, which are you preferring? I think it's Waka.
Probably Waka. Like I said, Flaherty has had shoulder issues, and shoulder issues are scarier than elbow.
For sure.
And it's just it's hard to I want to see Waka. I've seen him come out of it and be effective again, at least for a while, to a degree. Flaherty, we're sort of waiting. Has he hit bottom yet? How long is the bottom? So he's not there yet. Flaherty's definitely a 1-year deal kind of thing, and I would not necessarily count on it being a productive year. So maybe 2 years, one with an option or something like that.
Well, and that's just it. I don't care if you break your elbow, but your shoulder is that's problems. That's issues. Marcus Stroman. I don't know if the market's going to be as robust as he's expecting.
Yeah, he ended up opting out, which
doesn't strike anybody out though.
At the beginning of the season, people were expecting him to opt out because he had been pitching so well, but he really lost it in the second half of the season, even before that, and it was not going great for the Cubs. So he's rolling the dice a little bit that the market's going to be robust, and he's going to at least get what he had before with a few more years guaranteed. So I'd like to see him throw. I don't know. I'm kind of down on Marcus right now. So
I feel like he would be angling for like 4 years at 20+ million to start, and I just don't see it.
Not the way he finished the season. I don't give him that money.
Luis Severino, to me, is the quintessential Twins target.
Yeah, I agree. He's showed a lot more life on his pitches. You still have to worry about, you put maybe a lot of incentives in the deal. You don't make the deal too long. You don't necessarily worry about, you worry about the money, but you worry about that last. I would definitely take a chance on him before I would Stroman at this point, considering what you're probably going to have to give him.
Would you have any interest in Sean Manaea at this point? The strikeouts are there. The walks are actually not that bad. Kept the homers in check. But we're just kind of a swingman this year for the Giants. I don't know. I mean, how much do you think it matters if you have 1 lefty, 2 lefties, 3 lefties in your rotation? If you have 5 righties versus 4 righties and a lefty doesn't embarrass himself, does it really matter? Because if it does at all, if you have any reason to believe at all, that might be a spot to snag a cheap lefty, him or, I don't know, maybe Alex Wood. I'm not sure.
Wood's a bit cranky at this point. I have liked Manaea before. Early in the season, not so good. Toward the end of the season, seemed to get it back on track a little bit, in and out of the rotation. I believe. I think we're talking about guys who are on the list who I'm not necessarily that excited about right now, but he's a guy that you could get. Remember, San Francisco is a pretty good. They've tweaked it a little bit, but it's a really good pitcher's park. So you got to look closely at which numbers are which, and why he's got certain numbers, and what might they be at a neutral park or worse for pitchers.
Well, and they've had a reputation for getting the best out of guys too. It's why guys go there in the first place. But then, can they bring that with them? Kevin Gausman obviously was able to leave there and do just fine for himself, both financially and on the mound. But no guarantee of anything. Let's finish up here with some trade discussions. When you're trying to identify teams to trade with at this point of the offseason, I mean, basically you go to the standings and dig up, right? Like dig up, stupid. Who do the Royals have that might be interesting? I like Brady Singer, but I don't know. I like Reese Olson from the Tigers, but the Tigers aren't going to trade him because the Tigers are on the upswing. It gets hard. It gets really difficult because then it's like, who the heck do the Rockies have that you want? Nobody ever.
Right.
Not technically true, but trade. That's why trading is so funny right now, though, is if the Twins have these self-imposed or whatever budget limits. There's the dog. I knew he was going to jump in here. If they do, then a trade might be the route, as in, trade prospects, get a guy who's got some control, get a feel for if you really like him, like his motion like that, and then extend him. I don't know. I mean, I still think they're going to try to do the thing where they make someone a better version of themselves.
Yeah.
Frankie Montas was the original target there, and it spawned an incredible meme in Twins Twitter called "Where Frankie." I don't know if you ever saw that, but
I didn't see that. But
I get the sense though that there'll be someone like that this offseason. I would campaign for Brady Singer just because I believe in the stuff. The numbers haven't necessarily been there, but I like. Make sure I get the right Keller. Mitch Keller from the Pirates. Pirates seem to be going nowhere, especially now with Johan Oviedo having his arm barking at him. But other than that, like it can be kind of hard to identify teams who are going to be willing to trade pitching. Again, we don't know about Miami. I would target them for sure. Still need offensive help. But when you think about who makes sense as a trade target, do you make a list at the beginning of the offseason and then it maybe changes as the offseason goes? Or do you have a pretty good idea, do you think, at the outset?
Yeah, I think you make a good point about how things change depending on circumstances for free agency, who's getting long deals there, and other deals that teams make. The Atlanta and the White Sox kind of surprised everybody last night with a trade with Aaron Bummer leaving the White Sox, going to the Braves for Soroka and Jordan Schuster and like 7 other guys. So things like that shake up.
I think you said Jordan Schuster isn't like Jordan Schusterman.
Right. Exactly.
Is it James Schuster?
What's that?
What's the Schuster's real name? Is it James?
I thought it was Jordan.
I don't think so.
It's not?
Jared Schuster.
Jared, right. And I got him mixed up with Jordan Schusterman, who hasn't he been breaking news this offseason?
Doesn't. I think he got in trouble for it, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Or was that was the other guy of Cespedes BBQ, Jake. Everybody loves Jake.
Right, Jake
anyway,
but and I messed up Jared's name. It's messed me up. There's one guy out there you haven't mentioned who's pretty obvious, and that's Paul Blackburn on the Athletics.
Actually, you know what? I did an entire segment on him about a week ago. So maybe you should have been on the show before. Like maybe you should have joined the show. I'm kidding. He's interesting and it's going nowhere.
I'm sorry, you cut out there.
No. He's interesting, but he's going nowhere with Oakland. So yeah, no.
I thought you meant like they're not trading him. That kind of going nowhere. But you mean he's not advancing his career. That's the guy, Paul Blackburn. It's like I don't know. He reminds me of like if everything went right with Kevin Slowey, or one of those Twins guys from about 11 years ago. I can't believe that he hasn't been on the Twins yet. He seems like a guy that would be in their rotation. He would be, and you could give the A's. It's not like the A's. The A's need anything. So a place to play, a minor league depth. The Twins certainly could give up something for him, and he doesn't have a lot of tread on his arm. He's also a guy. I don't know for a fact that he hasn't been designated for assignment ever in his life, but it seems like maybe that happened once. So you're looking for a guy who's kind of already done the dead cat bounce and is kind of on his way up. He's one guy. Another guy who I've always liked, sometimes without any good reason, is Nick Pivetta. We'll see what the Red Sox are up to with him, but that's a guy more established than Blackburn that you could put, as a fourth starter and be really happy with and get a lot of innings out of. End of the season, had some problems at the beginning of the season, but ended on a great, a flurry of great starts. Those are two guys there. And of course, the Mariners have like an extra guy, an extra great prospect that everybody wishes they have. They don't have room for all of them. Bryce Miller or Brian Wu or somebody like that.
Woo!
Exactly. And that
Could you imagine Brian Wu in the city that Ric Flair went to college? I mean, makes too much sense. Yusei Kikuchi is a guy who I've always liked from a stuff standpoint. He kind of put it together a little better this year. I think he's always going to give up homers. Hyunjin Ryu is another guy, I think, as a free agent as opposed to a trade. But one thing I want to ask you, and then we'll get out of here. Do you think the trade market could be a little funny with the number of respectable pitchers available? Like if you're in an off season where Wade Miley, perfectly solid big league starter, right? You probably get 120, 140 innings of 3.95 ERA and 8 strikeouts and 3.5 walks, just very normal numbers, is maybe like you could probably justify him anywhere from 15th to 25th on the power rankings, right?
Right.
So trading could be tricky and it might lead or lend itself to waiting. I'm interested to see though, because, we're seeing trades because of the non-tender deadline. I'm not sure how to really try to forecast the storm ahead of us because of all these variables.
Right. So then you look at maybe other variables. With the A's, they are trying to they're stripping it down to like a gasoline can, and that's it. If they were like a helicopter or something.
Oil can, boy. Just bring him back.
Exactly. I mean, they don't want anything left. I mean, why have any? He's Blackburn's a free agent, I think, in 2, maybe 3 years. Get something now for him. Yeah. So players like Miller and Wu are really good prospects. You're going to get a lot for them. Someone like Nick Pivetta, maybe you're not going to get so much. And maybe the list of trade partners is short. So maybe there's like 3 or 4 guys there who you would have to give up something substantial. But there's, like you said, there's a lot of other guys who are kind of like, well, maybe they're not, maybe they don't get tendered, or maybe even if they do get tendered, they're not that desirable anyway. And they're not going to be that valuable in the trade. So there's a few guys as far as the trade market goes where you're going to have to give up something, but there's going to be a lot of guys too where I think they're going to come pretty cheap. And if you pick your targets well, you might come up with something in the bargain bin. Yeah.
If you find a brewer you really like, pick a brewer, any brewer, just not Bernie Brewer or Corbin Burns, which is very close to Brewer. No, it's not. Well, that's pretty much a wrap. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting secondary tier targets. Will they bring in someone who's been hurt, bring back Tyler Mahle? I don't think they're going to do the Lance Lynn dance again, but Eric Lauer, I'll end on that. I think Eric Lauer could be interesting. Absolutely dreadful season. But again, if you want a lefty, you want a cheap lefty, and you want one who has been decent, not that far in the past. I don't know. Eric Lauer made my list a couple of weeks ago. I said the Twins should trade for him. He got DFA'd before he could be non-tendered. But we'll see what happens. But hey, Dave, thank you so much for taking time out of your Friday night. We'll come back Monday, rested, refreshed, rejuvenated, and ready to talk about the Twins tendering most of their guys, but not all of them. How does that sound?
Sounds great, Brandon. Look forward to it.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much. He's Dave Brown at Answer Dave Brown. I'm Brandon Moore, and unfollow me at Brandon_WARNE. And we'll see you next time. This is Locked On Twins.